Okay, thank you. Councillor Arthur.
Thank you, Lord Provost, and thank you, Ms Tanner, for your work and the work of your team. I'm sure others agree with me when I say I was really disappointed to hear that one of the councillors acted unprofessionally in your offices. I hope your letter generates a prompt apology. In terms of my question, it relates to the so-called old boys network. Later in the agenda, we'll be discussing whether or not the complaints that they dealt with should be investigated to see if they've been dealt with properly. Based on your experience of the Sean Bell and your inquiry, what confidence do you have that the paperwork and the data around these people will be as full as it should be?
I can say in all honesty that I don't have a great amount of confidence that you would have paperwork of the appropriate amount relating to particularly historical complaints. The note-taking around the issues we were investigating was very, it wasn't good at all, in fact non-existent in some circumstances, and that involved us even going to the extent of checking PA's diaries, people's diaries to see if meetings had been noted. There were no records of important meetings which had taken place. There were no minutes taken of meetings. There were no proper notes taken of disclosures. So I wouldn't be entirely confident that you would find the material that you require, even in relation to matters which were investigated. And that's one of the reasons that one of our strong recommendations is that there's a much more thorough system of investigations with proper documentary evidence of investigations that are undertaken.
Okay, thank you. I mean, that's very concerning, particularly given some of the cases that these people would have been dealing with day to day. But it leads me, it's a good transition into my question for Mr. Kerr, and that's that it's when Ms Tanner read out her recommendations earlier, I thought it was shameful that it's taken these events to generate some of these recommendations. Some of them are common sense, like the one that's just outlined. So are we out of step here with other councils? Are these recommendations things that we should have been doing, Mr. Kerr? Are these changes long overdue? And is there a risk that other people have been let down because we don't have these processes in place properly?
It's quite difficult to answer, Councillor Arthur, because I would say yes to some of what, and agree with you in some instances where it's very obvious that we need to improve, and we haven't recognised that the record keeping and note taking, etc., that Susanne's just outlined, for instance, has been inadequate. Other things are difficult to make any comparison with. And some things are not, because other councils do and other councils don't. And there's a whole mixture of practice, because of course, in the conversation we've been having with the inquiry, we've already started to look at what will we need to do to make these recommendations happen, and what is a reasonable benchmark against other organisations of our size. So we've already started to do that process in anticipation that we would be implementing a number of these recommendations. So undoubtedly, our record keeping and our ability to have comprehensive HR records, particularly historically, has hampered a number of our investigations over the past. And Susanne's right about having to do an awful lot of what I would describe as digging for information when it should have been more easily available, and we will have to address that going forward.
But hindsight's a powerful thing, and I'm applying that to myself rather than your comment, to be honest, Mr. Kerr. But if a number of investigations have highlighted this deficiency, including quite a high-profile one we've recently dealt with in full council, why weren't these changes made already?
Without referring back to the different investigations, Councillor Arthur, I can't actually answer that in the thing, but I am happy that when we go forward to the recommendations that are going to be made by council, that we give you a briefing about exactly what we're doing, what we have done, and why we haven't undertaken it till now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Arthur.